How's it going? Welcome back. It's Jonathan. In today's video, we are talking about the time factor of WD Gann. Okay, now if you're unfamiliar with this, the time factor is how Gann was able to uncover market moving in a form of arithmetic motion. And that is how he was able to produce his forecasts. Okay, give me a second while I bring the mic slightly closer to my mouth. Alrighty, so we're going to be doing this today by going through the PDF or book or write-up or whatever by James Smithson. He's a Gann researcher, and I was just searching the web for some information to share with you, and I came across this. I thought it'd be a perfect one to start on. So, just much like the last video I put out, a lot of people hear me talk, they hear me go through these things, but they might not trust or believe what I have to say, mainly because that they have their own preconceived opinions about the world or things like that. And I'm just a small YouTuber with no real influence in the markets or no real influence in life. So they don't really, get the good stuff out of what I'm trying to show them. Now, for those who want to know what's coming up around our X-date, which is occurring next month, that's right, between the 14th to around the 16th on average, is going to be our X-date, and then we're marking that with our seasonal date, which is occurring around the 21st to 22nd of September. Oh my God, our massive X-date is coming up again. And we'll keep tracking these for you 90 days in advance. We're going to start doing forecasts that are 100 days out, 300 days out, even maybe a decade out. If you're still around to live in a decade, you're going to start seeing some pretty phenomenal forecasts I'm going to put out for you, okay? So keep that in track. A lot of people are now starting to catch on to our X-dates. They're starting to, come up to terms and learn about this. So you're going to start seeing a lot of people put out very similar timeframes to what we're putting out or what I'm putting out. Whether they're following my work or doing their own research, I got no idea, but it's starting to match up with my numbers and my dates. And I've been doing this the longest out of these YouTube guys in the sense of the timing stuff. So I do think I have one step ahead of these people. So I will try to keep it one step ahead for you guys, okay, when we keep tracking these turn dates. So with that said, next month, big time frame that we're watching for potential market turns. We're going to start moving on from that now, okay? So the time factor of WD Gann, what is it? Well, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but this PDF should give you some ideas on what it is. And then you'll start to see how we have been using it for the last couple of years to our advantage in market forecasting. Let's read through this together. WD Gann's outstanding skill was his ability to produce accurate annual forecasts of the stock and commodity markets. Gann stated that his forecasts were based on his secret, time factor. However, careful analysis of his novel entitled The Tunnel Thru the Air reveals Gann's belief in the overwhelming importance of astrology. Therefore, astrology is the real basis of Gann's annual forecast. Indeed, astrological analysis is implicit at key points in his books and courses. Consequently, it is concluded that if we wish to emulate Gann's outstanding forecasting skills, we must follow in his footsteps by firstly learning astrology and then applying this knowledge to the stock and commodity market, which is exactly what I've been doing for you guys, okay? I've been showing you how it works. William Gann, he died in 1955, okay, so he was the pioneer along with all the others out there on this basic golden age of technical analysis. Now, we've already been through the golden age of technical analysis. Between 1850s to 1950s was the golden age of technical analysis. That is where all the major research was produced on how the world and the financial markets work. Everything that we've had since then is minor tweaks, simply learning or relearning how it was done. But nothing new is happening, okay? We've passed the golden age now, okay? Nothing new is occurring. If you want to learn how the markets work, go back in time because the golden age has already taught you. Gann was an outstanding stock and commodity trader. He was also a prolific teacher of how to make speculation a profitable profession, writing some 7 books and producing 2 courses on trading the stock and commodity market. However, Gann's superlative skill was his ability to produce annual forecasts of the stock and commodity markets 1 year in advance, which is kind of what we're doing for you now. Although he also sent his client supplements, which corrected his annual forecasts when necessary. Again, like we do, following his footsteps, the overall accuracy of these annual forecasts is highly impressive. For example, Gann's annual stock market forecast for 1929, which was published in November 1928, unequivocally forecasted the great crash in the fall of 1929. However, Gann continued to produce and publish annual forecasts of the stock and commodity markets until shortly before his death in 1955. The time factor is the key to Gann's forecast. Gann's forecasts of the stock and commodity markets were based on the time factor. The dictionary definition of which is the passage of time, is a limitation of what can be achieved. Again, providing the following comments on the time factor. The most important thing of all is the time factor, which I use in making up my annual forecast. It is not my object here to give away the secret, but I am showing you plain enough and giving you the rules enough that if you follow them, you'll be able to make success in the stock market. Many people want to know what method I use to determine the future indications of the stock market. I keep charts of various active stock, and I also set a set of averages. My charts differ from the charts of the average statistician because they are based on my discovery of my own. I have discovered the time factor that enables me to determine important tops and bottoms 1 or more years in advance. My annual forecasts on stocks issued in December for 10 years past have proved remarkably correct. The cotton and grain markets can also be forecasted by this time factor, which enables me to tell when extreme highs or lows will be made, as well as minor moves. Again, I don't want to say too much about that, but if you've been following any of our forecasts, any of the things we say when we pinpoint these dates, etc., we're doing the exact same thing. The time factor and the time periods are the most important in determining a change in trend because time can overbalance price. And when the time is up, the volumes of sales will increase and force prices higher or lower. Okay? Again, time can overbalance price. Time is the most important factor of all, and not until sufficient time has expired does any big move up or down start. The time factor will overbalance both space and volume. I won't go into space now. When time is up, space movement will start and large volume will begin, either up or down. At the end of any important movement, monthly, weekly, or daily, time must be allowed for accumulation or distribution or for buying and selling to be completed. Therefore, we learn from Gann that the time factor is the most important element in forecasting markets, and therefore he used the time factor in producing his highly accurate annual forecast of stock and commodity market. The time factor is so fundamental that it precedes and therefore causes changes in price. Yes, that is correct. And changes in volume in the stock and commodity market. The time factor is a valuable secret, details of which he is unwilling to reveal. He is, however, prepared to teach you the trading rules which, when properly applied, produce profits in the stock and commodity market. Now, in the Tunnel Through the Air, he had a few things to say, and I believe that Tunnel Through the Air was a very complicated book, but once read a few times, which we'll go into in a second, you'll start to see the pattern emerge. Although Gann was unwilling to explicitly reveal his time factor in his books and courses, he was prepared to leave strong clues in his novel entitled Tunnel Through the Air, which he wrote in 1927. This book describes the events in the United States leading up to the Second World War through the life of the principal character, Robert Gordon. Most importantly, in the foreword of the book, Gann wrote, Through the Tunnel Through the Air, is mysterious and contains a valuable secret clothed in veiled language. When you read it the third time, a new light will dawn. You will find the hidden secret. The future will be an open book. Gann's valuable secret clothed in veiled language is that the Bible clearly states astrology really works. This theme runs throughout the book and is highlighted by the following quotations. Robert was a great believer in astrology because he found this great science referred to many times in the Holy Bible. He had made note as he read the Bible at different times where it referred to astrology or the signs in the heaven, and was thoroughly convinced that the influence of the heavenly bodies govern our lives. I believe in the stars, I believe in astrology, and I have figured out my destiny. The Bible makes it plain that the stars do rule. Through my study of the Bible, I have determined the major and minor time factor repeat in history of nations, men in the market. Again, if you look at the time factor in the Bible, you'll see a lot of these time factors, the exact time factors that Gann started to apply to stock. What does it mean when there's 144 years? What does it mean when there's 144,000 men? The numbers in the Bible, they're very significant. I have studied the Bible very carefully. I believe it is the greatest scientific book ever written. The laws are plainly laid down how to make success. There is a time and a season for everything, and if man does things according to time, he will succeed. Robert had gone deeply into the Bible study in order to learn more about the great science of astrology. He read all the books he could get on astrology and began to understand why things had happened as they had. Now, this is a bit of a synopsis or a guesswork of what it means on the front and back cover of Gann's book that we're about to go into. This is not my opinion, this is the opinion of the author. Let's take a look at what he has to say. Gann's valuable secret that astrology really works is not confined to the content of the book. Indeed, Gann subtly reveals his valuable secret on the cover. The illustration of the front cover has 3 elements. In the background is an interlocking compass and set square, from which comes the tunnel. In the foreground is a pair of scales, on one side of which is an hourglass, and on the other is price movement. Stretching between the background and the foreground is a series of interlocking squares. The esoteric meaning behind this illustration on the front cover of the book is as follows. The interlocking compass and set square is the symbol of the Freemasons, which Gann himself was one. More specifically, the compass, which of course used during circles, symbolizes the circle of the heavens or the astrological zodiac. The set square, which is of course used in drawing the square angle of 90 degrees, symbolizes the most important angle between two planets in astrology, which is 90 degrees or a square aspect. Therefore, the esoteric meaning behind the Freemason symbol is that the great circle of the heavens and their angles between the planets, i.e. the science of astrology, is of fundamental importance. Moreover, according to occultism, astrological forces are vibrations which are transmitted to Earth via infinite number of longitudinal waves through the ether. Therefore, the tunnel through the air is Gann's illustration, and indeed in the book's title, symbolizes the transmission of astrological forces from the heavens to the earth. On one side of the scales is an hourglass, which symbolizes the time factor. On the other side is the price movement. Therefore, this pair of scales symbolizes the fact that in the forecast of the stock and commodity markets, Gann weighed up or examined the time factors and their past, present, and future implications on price. The series of interlocking squares symbolizes the fact that, as Gann observed, the price action of a particular stock or commodity unfolds according to a series of interlocking squares. This is the reason, according to Gann, that every stock makes tops or bottoms on some exact mathematical point in proportion to some previous move, and each top or bottom in wheat or other commodities comes out in accordance with an exact mathematical portion, some other top or bottom. Now, if you want to have seen me do this for you in advance, go back to my last videos where I put tops and bottoms on the charts before they actually occur, and I'm doing that by measuring out in time last tops and bottom. In summary, therefore, the illustration on the front cover of the Tunnel Through the Air highlights the fact that astrological influences, that is, the angles between planets in the circle of the zodiac, are transmitted to Earth via waves which resemble tunnels through the air. And after weighing up the historical influence of these astrological forces on a particular stock or commodity, one can forecast the future price movements and in particular the future price squares. As for the back cover, according to the author, Gann's valuable secret that astrology really works is not confined to the front content or the front cover of the book. Instead, the valuable secret is also slowly revealed in the illustration of the back cover. The illustration on the back cover of the Tunnel Through the Air shows two sets of interlocking squares stretching on to the horizon. One set is shown in the sky and one set is shown on the earth. Also shown on the earth is a pyramid inscribed with the name WD Gann. In this illustration, the squares in the sky symbolize astrological squares when the planets form an angle of 90 degrees with respect to each other, and the squares on earth symbolize the unfolding of price action in the stock and commodity markets in the form of interlocking price squares. Here again is illustrating an age-old astrological saying, as above, so below, which we get in the Bible. However, Gann's more specific symbolism is that the astrological squares in the heavens cause the price squares in the stock and commodity markets on earth. Gann made this point elsewhere when he stated, "We use the square of the odd and even numbers to get not only the proof of the market movements, but the cause." Now, I have gone through the square or one form of the square several times on the crypto market, on the Dow Jones, etc., where I put on the market those squares, and we see the squares on there, and I tell you this is a symbol, or this is a price action movements of the square of 9. So you've seen me use it, and I'm just showing you other people's opinions on it now, okay? The final point to note about this illustration is the position of the pyramid which bears Gann's name. This is located between heaven and earth and reflects Gann's view that he was a seer destined to observe astrological squares in the heavens and to forecast their influences on price squares in the stock and commodity markets on earth. In summary, therefore, the valuable secret clothed in our language of Gann's book, The Tunnel Through the Air, is that, as the Bible clearly states, astrology really works. Gann's time factor is astrology. As stated above, Gann's forecasts of the stock and commodity markets were based on the time factor, which may be defined as the passage of time as a limitation on what can be achieved. Since astrology may be defined as the study on the effects of the trends in time, we see that the time factor may be synonymous with astrology. It therefore appears that Gann preferred to state that his market forecasts were based on the time factor rather than to state they were based on astrology. Indeed, this is certain after carefully studying Gann's book, The Tunnel Through the Air, and identifying its valuable secret that astrology really worked. The reason for Gann's secrecy is suggested in the following quotation. "It has taken me 20 years of exhaustive study to learn the cause that produces effects according to time. That is my secret, and it is too valuable to be spread broadcast via radio back then. Besides, the public is not yet ready for it. And that was in the Morning Telegraph in 1929. Therefore, Gann preferred not to reveal the astrological basis on his market forecasts for the following reason. The principle that astrology may be used to produce detailed forecasts of the stock and commodity markets is a valuable secret and had taken him much time and effort to master. Gann firmly believed that his students should, like him, devote much time and hard work to their studies on how to speculate for a profitable profession. Gann was well aware that the suggestion that the stock and commodity markets are governed by astrological influences is an astounding new paradigm which violates the conventional wisdom and would therefore attract hostility. This is highlighted in the following quote. It appears to be a fact that Mr. Gann has developed an entirely new idea to the principles of governing stock market movement. He bases his operations on certain natural laws which, through existing since the world began, have only in recent years been analyzed with precision and added to the list of so-called modern discoveries. We have asked Mr. Gann for an outline of his work and have secured some remarkable evidence as to the research obtained therefore. We submit this in full recognition of the fact that the man in Wall Street with a new idea, an idea which violates the traditions and encourages a scientific view of the proposition, is not usually welcomed by the majority. For that reason that he stimulates through and research, these activities said majority abhorred. Now, this is important. The reason why, and I would like to say it, the reason why I do not have a big following is because I touch on the basis of this. I do believe, and I've always been told never to talk about this because it will get you more haters than people who like to follow you. It's too hoo-ha, but I believe people need it. Since Gann's book, The Tunnel Thru the Air, reveals the valuable secret that astrology really works, and by implications astrology is the basis of Gann's stock and commodity market forecast, one should look for evidence of the use of astrology by Gann in his writing. Gann's chapters on forecasting in his stock and commodity courses. Gann produced and sold separate courses for trading in stock and commodity market. These courses overlapped to some significant extent. One chapter common in both the courses entitled The Basis of My Forecasting Method, Geometrical Angles. An important quotation from this chapter is as follows. We use three figures in geometry, the circle, the square, and the triangle. We get the square, the triangle points of the circle to determine the points of time, price, space, resistance. We use a circle of 360 degrees to measure time and price. Therefore, there are 360 degrees in a circle. No matter how large or small the circle may be, certain numbers of these degrees and angles are of vast importance and indicate when important tops and bottoms occur in stock and commodity, as well as denote important resistance level. Again, these degrees of the square of 9 will provide us important resistance levels and support levels. Every movement in the market is the result of a natural law and of a cause which exists long before the effect takes place and can be determined years in advance. The esoteric meaning behind this statement is as follows. There are 360 degrees in a circle, the largest of which is the great circle of the heavens or the zodiac. Certain points of this zodiac identified by the precise number of degrees are very important because they relate to specific stock and to specific commodity markets. Consequently, the angles between a planet and these specific points on the zodiac and also the angles between two planets are very important because they signify tops and bottoms in the stock and commodity markets. Two important angles or aspects, as they are called in astrology, are the square or the trine, T-R-I-N-E, not that's typo there, of 90 degrees and 120 degrees. Since the angles between the planet and the particular point in the zodiac, or between two planets, can be calculated years in advance, stock and commodity markets can be a principle to be forecasted years in advance, as Gann set up here. Okay. It is also important to note that the above quotation by Gann was in the introduction of his chapter on forecasting by means of Gann angle. Forecasting by using the 1x1, 2x1, or 1x2, etc. trend lines from important tops or bottoms on price charts. Therefore, a very important implication here is that, as the chapter title suggests, the basis of Gann's forecasting method was not merely that geometrical Gann angles drawn on the price charts, but more fundamentally the geometrical angles between planets and the zodiac, which is of course astrology. In summary, therefore, Gann is suggesting that the angles between the planets and the zodiac in the heavens, astrological influences, cause the particular angle of the trend line on the price chart. And this is the real basis of his forecasting method. Let's go on. Gann's emphasis on anniversary dates and seasonal tendency in the stock market. Oh my God, you might be getting some freaking valuable information right now. I actually didn't read this far down. Let's continue because it might just unveil something that I didn't think that you'd ever see, but it looks like it might be here. The common feature of both books is that the emphasis of importance of an anniversary dates and seasonal tendencies, as the following quotations illustrate. You ready, guys? My objective in writing the book of 45 Years on Wall Street is to give you some new and valuable rules on time periods which will help to guide you in determining highs and low prices in the future. In my research work, I have discovered that stocks make important tops and bottoms and trends in the months when they reach extreme highs and lows. These are what are called anniversary date, and these important dates should be watched each year for important trend change. It is very important to watch the date when an individual commodity makes an extreme high. Here you go, guys, listen up. Extreme high or extreme low. The first important time period to watch from any anniversary date is third or fourth month, okay, 90 days later. Third or fourth month. Then around the 6th or 7th month, where many important tops or bottoms are reached. 90 days later, 120 days later. Come on, guys, stay up. The esoteric meaning behind these statements is as follows. Certain points of the zodiac, identified by precise numbers of degrees, relate to specific stocks and to specific commodity markets. The sun is unique amongst the planets in that it completes one revolution of the zodiac every year. Moreover, on any given day of the year, the sun is the exact same position in the zodiac as it was on the year earlier, 10 years earlier or the century earlier. I've always told these guys out here that the sun is way more important than the moon, okay? Sun is way more important than the moon. And if you can understand this, well, you're going to completely understand what I do. This is the cause of seasonal tendencies in the stock and commodity markets. Indeed, this is the cause of all seasonal tendencies on the earth. The sun is more important than the moon. The important point to note here is that Gann's emphasis on seasonal tendencies in the stock and commodity markets to encourage his students to think about it and identify the cause. The cause is the position of the planets and the particular angles of specific points in the zodiac. I've gone through several dozen times to illustrate our use of the sun around the zodiac, because the sun is the most important for short-term forecast. Gann's recommendation to study astrological influences on the commodity market. Amongst Gann's surviving papers are his two astrology letters. More specifically, in January 1954, Gann wrote to one of his students recommending that he study the astrological influences on the soybean market. The longitude of the planets and the longitude of the average of the prices determine the resistance levels as the price of soybeans moves around each cycle of 24 cents per bushel. Tongue twist. And in March 1954, he wrote to another student recommending that he study the astrological influences of the coffee market. By studying all of the astrological data outlined above and applying it to coffee, you'll be able to learn more about what causes the changes in trend. Gann died in June 1955, and therefore his astrology letters are some of his last teachings. However, it is notable that in these two short letters, Gann does not reveal any clear or specific method of astrological forecasting of the commodity market. Instead, Gann encourages his students to observe, experiment, and learn for himself how the angles between the planet and their angles to specific points of the zodiac forecast and change the price trends. Indeed, it appears that Gann had for over 50 years kept secret his method for market forecasting, and at the age of 76 he was not simply going to reveal it to a student. Nevertheless, Gann was continuing his lifelong practice of helping his students make speculation profitable, etc. Alright, let's take a look at this conclusion before we wrap up this video. Conclusion and recommendations. WD Gann highly accurate annual forecasts of the stock market were based on astrology. Therefore, if we were investors and traders who wish to emulate Gann's outstanding forecasting ability, it is absolutely necessary that we learn astrology. Although astrology may be learned from a variety of sources, the present writer recommends the first step of correspondence spiritual astrology taught by a company here. So go ahead and take a look at them if you want. Once we have learned astrology, we must apply this knowledge to the stock market. I soon began to note the periodical recurrences of the rise and fall of stocks and commodities. This led me to conclude the natural law was the basis of market movement. I then decided to devote 10 years of my life to the study of the natural law, and I was applicable to the speculative markets and to devote my best energies towards calculation and profit profession. However, Gann has provided us with specific guidance. In summary, we should obtain daily price charts which depict important tops and bottoms of the stock and commodity markets, and we should then observe the following. The angles between the planets, the most important of which is the 90-degree angle. The angles, especially the 90-degree angle between planets and particular points in the zodiac. The longitudinal position of the zodiac, and especially its 90-degree angle to particular points of the zodiac, because this causes a seasonal tendency in a particular market. I think you guys have just probably figured out my X-date method. When we have mastered how astrological influences affect the stock and commodity markets, we will be in a position to produce accurate annual forecasts. Like Gann, we will then become the foremost speculators and traders for our generation. Although there are many individuals and companies around the world which teach Gann analysis through books, blah, 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 they should be avoided. This is because since none of these individuals or companies can produce an accurate annual forecast of the stock and commodity market, they do not in fact teach Gann's real method. There you have it, guys, straight from someone else's mouth, or straight from a horse's mouth per se. Yeah, so I'm going to pause this video right now. I'm going to open up Optima. We're going to take a quick look at a few charts, and then we'll close this video up, okay? Let's first take a look at Bitcoin. We'll take a look at our squares, our 90-day counts on Bitcoin. I hope you're starting to see why we're doing this now. I hope you're starting to click. So we've got a low which occurred in this period here. we're going to go mark that off as a success. Our low has occurred, the market then rebounded in here. Will we get another low towards the end? That's yet to be seen. But now we're looking for that potential rise up because I want to get another low in this period here. What does that mean for us moving forward? Well, we're going to take this 90-day cycle, 90 degrees in time. Yes, I've tried to explain it to you many times. Oh my God. Okay, so we're going to get a left or right translation of this point in here. And then we're looking for our final low to occur between October to November. So this is going to be interesting now. Let me go ahead and clear this up. We are getting a possible market rally, which will provide us either a left or right translation of this top before the next low. We're looking also for a low to occur in here. If we get a left translation top, that means that the low is going to be lower than the starting point, if this is the starting point of the cycle, which would mean prices are angled down. If we get a right translation top, it means that the bottom, when it comes down here, is going to be higher than where it started. So that's where we're at. I've got nothing else to say. Let's go ahead and take a look at our squares. We're still trending along this bottom square here. Haven't had a clear break. If we break, we're shooting down to this green square here around 27,500 or 26,500. Again, we're using squares just like Gann did, okay? Everything I've shown you, everything I teach you is the methods of Gann. Let's take a look at our X-date, see if there's had any hits or accuracy around this. I haven't opened this chart up since, and I don't have the actual data. So let's see what happens when the data load is coming in. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and update this now. We were looking for a potential change of trend to occur here. Looks like we possibly had a low occur, so the market ran down, hit a low. We're now looking to see if we're going to get another low or a top. Okay, remember, ideally we get top. The more tops, the better. I don't know what just happened. Ideally, we get a lot of tops and the market pushes down. I did put this time price rectangles in before. This was just a hypothesis. It was not a guaranteed hit. Okay, I was just showing you how to do price analysis. That's simply all it was. So we're moving on to now our second arrow. I'm going to leave these here just so that we can keep tracking them. The market moved down, hit the green arrow, started to move up. We're going to see now if we're going to get another low or a top occur possibly in the next 24 to 48 hours. We'll see what the market does. If it hits a low, then we just got to keep watching it. It might be moving the market higher. If the market moves higher, then we just got to see what happens as it heads into our X-date. We've still got over a month towards our X-date, so we're not close to it yet. We still can get those tops which push us lower. Ideally we want a good solid low into our X-date, okay? Now, if you want to learn about astrology or anything like that, I haven't wanted to talk about it purely because it is too esoteric and too niche. If you want to learn more about Gann, Tunnel Through the Air, things like that, maybe I just make it private, and if people want to join back ends or whatever, pay to get access, it's up to you. I will start to produce more content on that. But I don't know for the YouTube audience if you guys are really interested in that. And if we start to go out with a lot of Gann stuff, I know that a lot of people will start to get a bit angry and might start to come after me one way or another anyway. So that's all I have for this video. I do hope that you've learned something at least. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon.